Greetings! Today, we're going to be sharing some more footage and stories of UFOs and other mysterious or weird paranormal sorts of things in the Sedona area. We decided to share this information right now because the subject has been in the news with the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and other government agencies releasing more UFO files directed by President Trump. So it seemed like a good time to bring it up since there's so many people talking about it right now. We've got all kinds of weird things going on around here, and I have a feeling there's a lot more to the story and a lot more yet to be found. We're likely only just barely scratching the surface. One of the biggest sightings that I've had was, I think it was around a year ago. I went out with a friend who, she wants to remain anonymous, but we saw this together and it lasted for almost an hour. In fact, it probably lasted longer than that, but I literally filmed them for like 55 minutes straight. And that's some of the footage that we'll be showing here when I tell these other stories and when my dad shares some of his narration. Let us know if you see anything that we may have missed. But these things were just constantly flying up in different directions and coming back and flying down. These are not SpaceX rockets. Like, almost certainly I know what those look like, and this was totally different. Plus there's no record of a SpaceX launching site around here. I think the closest one is in California, based on some research I did in the past. And my buddy Jeremiah, who shared some of his pictures in the previous episode, he's been researching this stuff for a long time, and he has some inside sources, and he has claimed that these are linked to a secret military base. And I think that, I mean, I can only go so far with what I say, but he's like convinced. Like, I think he's seen some stuff, like some documents or some information that pretty much proves this to be the case. I can't say it proves it because I don't have that information myself, but that's what I tend to believe a lot of these are, especially from that night. I think that those are military craft, and there's a lot of crazy stories about that. Even just recently, there's like, I think it was a senator or congressman coming out talking about how there's like a alien breeding program where they're like mixing humans and aliens genetically together to have like these telepathic abilities so they can fly these ships with their mind, with their brain. And once again, I know all this stuff sounds just really hard to believe for a lot of people, and some people just totally dismiss it, but the longer I live, the more I realize how little I truly know. And I try to stay open-minded to as much as I reasonably can, and I admit that I don't know. So if I don't know, then I can't say that's not happening, because I don't know. But there's been so many stories of secret military around here over the years. There's like hundreds and hundreds, if not maybe even thousands of stories of people encountering the military around here with like M16s, and you know, a lot of times they're wearing black even, or they don't have like insignias, and they like turn people around and tell them to leave or else. And my buddy Jeremiah, I think he believes that these are private contractors, that they're not like the official military, but they're like security teams working for these aerospace firms like Lockheed Martin and, you know, those kinds of companies that are building these advanced ships. And I could just talk about this stuff forever with like the cement plant in Cottonwood and how the Skinwalker TV show came here and filmed, and they used LiDAR and found what appears to be a man-made tunnel going from the cement factory all the way through Bradshaw Ranch into the secret mountain area. And there's also Camp Navajo on the other side of that, which is a military base that there's rumors they had nuclear weapons there. So, and it is a known like weapons storage area. So it's almost certain that they got underground tunnels all over the place up there. And there's, you know, I could just keep going for like days and days about all this stuff, but I really do think that there is something to that, and that there really is some kind of secret base. And I said it in the previous episode, and maybe I even said it in this one already as well, but I think most of these things that we're seeing are experimental military craft. And that's kind of spooky and scary in some ways, but if they're doing this every night where anyone can just like go outside and see it, then like how secret is it? I even saw this guy recently on Facebook who's like a SWAT team member, and he's out there filming this stuff as well. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. And there's the Ross Coulthart from News Nation. He came here, he interviewed Jeremiah. Like, this stuff is all coming out. Like, there's really something going on here. And I don't know how deep it is. And honestly, I don't really want to get too close to it. Like, I'm fine right here. I don't need to dig any deeper. I don't need to cause any issues. So I try to stay away from those areas on my adventures because it just kind of creeps me out. So one of the weirder stories that I have to share happened when I was a little kid. Probably somewhere around 10 years old. There was a sleepover at a friend's house. There was probably like somewhere between 5 and 10 of us kids who were spending the night. Oh, hello, hummingbird. And I remember having this dream where there was like lights shining in through the windows. And I got the feeling that it was like little gray aliens or something. And then in the morning, I asked, I didn't ask. It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure I told some of the other kids the dream that I had with the weird lights shining through the windows. And they said that they had the same dream. And this was such a vivid dream that I still remember it today, like distinctly. It really, really stuck out and was like burned into my brain. And that's not where the story ends. It was a little over 10 years ago, somewhere around there, that I reconnected with the kid whose parents they didn't own the property, they were taking care of it. We reconnected on Facebook somewhere around 10 years ago, and I was curious, so I asked him, I was like, hey, Did you have that same dream that me and those other kids had all those years ago when we had that sleepover? And he said no, he didn't remember having that dream, but that he swears to this day that he had a little brother who was abducted by aliens, and no one believes him, not even his parents. One of the other experiences I had was also when I was a little kid. Oh, actually, that reminds me. I had another crazy dream when I was young, that I was like laying in my bed and this creature literally walked through the door like it wasn't physical, like it was a spirit almost. This like shadowy figure walked straight through the door up to me where I was laying in bed, and it just stared down at me. Like I was paralyzed, frozen. It was like sleep paralysis. And it was just looking at me like I meant something. Like I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but it was almost like I had some kind of destiny or something, and it was like checking up on me. And that was another one of those dreams that it was so strong that I can remember it perfectly and vividly to this day. And I've also heard of a lot of other people on the internet who've had similar experiences. There's whole documentaries out there about shadow people. So if that's something you're curious about, you may want to look into that. So that other story I was just about to mention was when I was young and I was down in the driveway playing or doing whatever I was doing, and I looked up towards Sedona, the city, and I saw one of those classic UFO silver disc flying saucers, and it was huge because I could see it quite distinctly, and it was way up there by Thunder Mountain. So I kind of had like a size perspective, and you know, I can't say exactly how big it was, but it was probably hundreds of feet. Like it was massive. And then I ran upstairs to tell my parents, and by the time we got back down there, it was gone. Another wild experience that I had was with my brother Robin. We had just done this crazy all-day hike where we stumbled onto this ancient little village. Like we were literally walking and then turned around and there was like walls and buildings, and we didn't even see it until we turned around and looked. It was pretty amazing. But on the way back at night, we saw this UFO that would fly way up and then fly way down and then fly way up and then fly way down. Almost like it was joyriding or just out like cruising around having fun. And that went on for like an hour or more. Like it was one of the most amazing UFO experiences I've ever seen. There was this other one with my other brother, John, that's, you know, a bit more hard to believe. We were on a spirit quest, and we were up on top of Pyramid Mountain, which is a very special place here in Sedona. And we saw some UFOs, or at least one UFO, up above us. So right after we saw that stuff in the sky, my brother's whole personality changed. Like I'd never seen him like that before. He's like usually just like full of life, like all like talking, joking, laughing, like he's very constantly, you know, engaged. And all of a sudden he just like turned into this like calm Buddha, like started doing this like I forgot what they're called, but like this hand symbol, like in like a relaxed Buddha pose, like cross-legged and everything. And he just started saying this weird, I'm not gonna say weird, but he started saying this stuff that was unusual for him to say, which was I forget exactly what it was, but it was stuff like peaceful, enlightenment, like encouraging, supportive sorts of wisdom, and he was just so calm. He felt like a completely different person. And afterwards I asked him about that. Even a year later I asked him again. I'm like, hey, were you just joking around with me? Were you like pretending to like channel some kind of being or something? And he said no, that he was like, that was a real thing, that really happened. And it's not the first time either with him. Like, he's had some other experiences where he's channeled beings before. And that's something I was a lot more skeptical of when I was younger. But after seeing that myself, like, I'm much more open-minded. I've also done a lot more research and learned a lot more about programs like Stargate and stuff, where the government was actually spending like millions of dollars investigating telepathic sorts of remote viewing and things. And more than ever, I really do think that maybe there is something to these channelers and these people who claim to channel other beings, because that was a wild experience to, like, right after we saw the UFO or whatever it was in the sky, to have him like totally change his personality and start saying all this stuff, and then over a year later continue to claim that it wasn't a joke and that that really happened. It's just, I tend to think there really was something to that. Something else I'd like to mention is that I've seen quite a few different kinds of weird things in the sky. I mentioned the flying saucer type, and most of the ones that we film are like just balls of light that look like moving stars. But I have seen, like, this one I remember was like rainbow colored, flying through the sky, and it just kept changing into all these rainbow colors. And that was one of the most beautiful and interesting ones that I've seen. I've also seen some other ones. There was one that was like a fixed wing military craft that almost certainly wasn't extraterrestrial. It was almost certainly, you know, terrestrial, like secret government or whatever. Because years later I learned about these X planes, which are experimental planes, and I saw a few that looked very similar to that. It's hard to describe what it looked like, but I saw it pretty clearly, and it had like spoilers and foils and it was like very aerodynamic, almost like arrow shaped. And then there's this woman who does UFO tours in Sedona named Melinda Leslie. And I think she's done like thousands of tours over the years. And she claims that they see UFOs every time they go out. So, and I've heard other people say that too, that like you can go out every single night and see stuff here. So I really do more and more these days think that there is something special about Sedona. And maybe it's just, once again, there's like regular military testing going on, so they're out there all the time. Or maybe something else, like maybe there is something extraterrestrial or extra dimensional. Or maybe they're like spirits or time travelers, or who knows. But Sedona is such a beautiful place. I could see why other beings from other places would want to come here and visit and check it out, because we already got like millions of people here on Earth coming here every year to visit and check it out. So it's not so crazy to me to think that this could be like a real, and also, not to go off too far, but some people believe that there's portals here, like due to the like minerals and geology, that there's like natural portals. And that could be another reason why there's so many sightings, is that like it's conducive for certain kinds of travel. And who knows if that's true or not, but I've heard some interesting stories, even Native American stories, where that they claim that there are portals here in Sedona that lead to other places. For the first number of years after I learned about UFO summoning, I would go out a lot at night or in the early morning for walks out into nature or down by the creek. And I saw so many of these things and had weird, what seemed like telepathic connections. But I had never seen any with other people at that point in time. And then I started going out with my dad and my friends and my brothers. And it's not just me anymore. Like, I've seen these things with lots of different people. So this is like a real thing. This is no joke. Like, I can go out on almost any night and see these things. And they're not, I mean, some of them are satellites, sure, but like, you can, if you learn enough about how satellites work, you can, I think, deduce that some of these things are clearly not satellites. And there's so many of them that it's just really amazing that there's something that is so like clear and obvious and repeatable, and you can keep going out and seeing them over and over again, and yet it's still such a fringe subject, and so many people out there still think it's like crazy or that UFOs aren't real, and it's really fascinating. Another interesting subject around this area is there's this place called Angel Valley, or it used to be called that. Now it's called something like Spirit of the Heavens. And it's down sort of by the area where I was born. And if you saw the previous episode, there's a whole interesting story about a UFO following the midwife the morning that I was born. And this place, Angel Valley or Spirit of the Heavens, they've got all these modern geoglyphs set up. And I read the book, or I read a book, and I didn't just read that book, I had also been to the official website before they took it down when the owner passed away. And those geoglyphs, he claimed, the guy who built them, that they were like spaceship landing pads. And he literally said that they had alien species from like all different kinds of species landing there. I think he said it was like 33 different species had landed there. Now that's all very difficult for even me to believe, and I'm very open-minded. But it is interesting the number he chose, 33? Really? If you know anything about secret societies and the Freemasons, you know that that number has a lot of meaning in certain circles. But it's just really interesting because you have like the Nazca lines, which have been spoken about on the Ancient Aliens show, and a lot of people believe that they were trying to communicate with beings from up above, because you can only really see those glyphs from up above. So I think it's fascinating that here in Sedona we also have a place like that, where the guy who built these things literally claims that there was like all these different alien species landing there. So we like I said, we got all kinds of weird and interesting stuff going on here in Sedona. I mentioned the portal earlier, and one other thing that I want to mention is all the claims of vortex energy. Like that's one of the things that Sedona is most well known for, are people who believe there's vortexes here. And there's actually this guy named Benjamin Lone Tree. I believe he's like an electrical engineer of over 40 years, and he even built his own device to measure these things. And he's shown some really compelling evidence. There was also a government study done by the USGS, and they found magnetic gravity anomalies here. So there's like actually real science that something is going on here. And I think that maybe there's a connection between all the UFO sightings and the vortex claims. Like maybe, and I have to wonder if there's a connection there. Maybe the ancient people were also aware of this stuff, because some of the most amazing things that we've found are in some of those areas where there's claims of vortexes, or where the government did their own study and found energy anomalies. So another interesting thing is that some scientists believe that the way that birds and other animals migrate is by using magnetite in their brains, which is a mineral that's also found under the ground. So it's my personal theory that some of this vortex stuff and this weird spiritual stuff could be connected to these large pockets of magnetite and quartz and, you know, like iron and other minerals underneath the ground that could be interacting with our brains.
Hello, I'm Michael Irvine, part of Grateful Adventures. I want to tell a story about a town where the people saw UFOs, and after too much attention, they had to learn to keep quiet about it. In 1981, the town of Childs in Arizona, which is close to Sedona, had 14 residents, and some of them reported seeing UFOs. Some of them made claims that the most sightings occurred around 1975. That is when the phenomenon peaked, but continued after that. There was no mention of when it started. Fossil Creek supplied the water, which was piped in huge tubes down the steep hill to the hydroelectric plant next to the Verde River, owned and operated by Arizona Public Service. The town of Childs was located there for the residents who worked at the power plant. Fossil Creek has an extensive and colorful Native American history because of its beautiful terrain and rich supply of spring-fed water. The Verde River flows into the Salt River near Phoenix, providing the last 25 miles of its length. It also served as the main conduit for the Phoenix Hohokam culture that cohabitated with the Sonawa living in the Verde Valley. I have to wonder if they also saw UFOs in this area as well as in Sedona, going back to their habitation along these waterways for 600 to 4,000 years ago or more. By any measure today, what was once the town of Childs would be considered an isolated and desolate place out in the middle of nowhere, mostly detached from civilization and only accessible by many miles of dirt roads. The last few miles of roadway with switchbacks and curvy mountain grades, dropping 1,300 feet down into the bottom of the Verde River Canyon and its enclave of power plant workers. The power plant itself was decommissioned on June 18, 2005, and most of its infrastructure was removed by June 10th of 2010. Stories of UFO sightings in Childs began to spread beyond the locals into cities and communities of the Verde Valley during the 1970s, creating quite a stir. News publications spread out from local to national reach, and that triggered an influx of thrill seekers wanting to see it for themselves. There were families, farmers, and even hippies from the ghost town of Jerome, seen by the residents of Childs as they were parked along the road day and night, laying on the hoods of their cars, looking up in the sky, hoping to see a real UFO. Interestingly enough, during the late 70s, there were probably as many sightings reported in Sedona, Payson, Heber, and Morenci as in Childs. In 1975, a UAP research organization from Tucson, Arizona, said that the UFO sightings made by Childs residents were probably accurate because of the clarity of their reports. Also, a Phoenix newspaper reporter said that he didn't believe there was a hoax involved, and that the witnesses were sincere and open about what they saw. Eventually, the residents grew tired of being questioned and decided to keep quiet so they could regain some privacy and try to return to a normal life. Some of the stories that were told about UFO sightings are quite fascinating. One fellow said he watched them zigzag, stop and change directions, and even vanish. He went on to say that one night, him and his wife were driving their truck up on top of the hill above town when a large, brilliant light, bigger than an airplane, appeared, and then it was approaching them. When it was almost on top of them, he stopped the truck and turned off the lights, at which time the object mysteriously disappeared. On another occasion, one evening, they saw one over a 69,000 volt power line, saying it sat down over it for a little bit and then took off. The next story they told was while driving down the hill one night. They noticed an object across the canyon sitting on the ground that looked like a trailer house with lights and windows that were really bright. So they stopped, turned off the headlamps, and watched it. Then it dimmed to where they could only see it with the binoculars. So once they got into the truck and started it up, it would brighten up again. This continued for about an hour until they left. These stories are like chapters in a book. They keep getting better. Something happened about 2 in the morning when the wife decided to look out the bedroom window. That's when she saw an object sitting up in the air. She woke everybody up while it continued just hovering. They were seeing what looked like windows in some kind of dome. They didn't know what it was, even while using binoculars. It remained there for a while. They noticed it had a translucent appearance and that it was quite large and motionless, sitting across the river. That family guessed it was close to the width of a football field. Then without notice, it took off, ascending straight up, and within 10 seconds, it disappeared completely without making a sound. A few days later, they had another experience. They had just returned home in the evening and were getting out of the truck when they witnessed a large light moving incredibly fast over the rim. At the same time, there was a full moon rising above the horizon. The fast-moving bright light was 4 times as big as the moon and was out of sight within a few seconds, heading towards Phoenix. A girl that lived next door said she saw a little light come off of a big light close to the nearby Verde hot springs. After floating around in the hills for a bit, it returned to the big light. The next story is from some other residents who claim on multiple occasions that something was falling from high up in the sky that they called angel hair. Described as a big long streamer of cobwebs, 30 to 50 feet long, and that could only be seen when the sun has moved down behind the hills. They say it also resembled fine dust particles. Sometimes they get caught in the cottonwood trees, bushes, and on other things. But if you touch them, they simply disappear. One night they noticed the big cottonwood trees were covered with little lights, kind of like at Christmas. The whole treetops were covered. Then a couple days later, the leaves dropped off, and each leaf had a brown hole in it. Then one night, cattle disappeared from someone's shed. They were counted by 3 different guys when they were put in there, and without explanation, the next morning, 10 were missing. They also found spots on the lawn that had something like ash on it, which mysteriously turned the grass brown. Samples of the substance were sent to a couple of labs, with results coming back as inconclusive. They didn't know what it was. The residents were humble about the sightings, saying that they felt peaceful and good feelings when they witnessed the UFOs.
What is alien or human? What is life or death? What is time and space? Is joy and wonder and grace what we truly are? As we hold one another's hands and hearts along the adventure homeward, living, laughing, loving, as if it is the first day of the rest of our life.
I have a friend who told me a story about someone she knew who claimed to have found an actual underground compound near one of the major resorts, and he said there were like pods with people inside of them. That is one of the creepier stories I've heard, and it also reminds me of this time when I was younger, probably in my young teens, and I went into a local crystal shop with my friend and his mom, and there was this guy there who said that he encountered military types out in the wilderness who were wearing all black and had laser pointers on their guns, and they pointed their guns at him and ordered him to go back the way he had came, or else they would basically shoot him and end his life. He also said in that same area he had seen a secret base that was built into the side of a mountain, and it had this giant wall that was seamlessly woven into the natural rock wall. Since then, I've heard numerous other more similar stories of people seeing structures like that built into the landscape and camouflaged, where military vehicles go inside and are not seen coming back out. There was another story a number of years ago where there was numerous reports of a whole military convoy driving out towards this same area for hours non-stop into the night, and none of those vehicles were reported to have come back the way they had came. There's basically nothing out there but wilderness, and it is a bit interesting how the place where so many people believe this is going on is called Secret Mountain and Secret Canyon. There's another place not too far away from there called Government Canyon, and there's some weird stuff going on over there too. Additionally, north of Camp Navajo, there's also a mountain called Government Mountain, and on Google Earth, it looks very unusual. I'm hesitant to get into too many details about some of this, but I've seen enough to make me think there is something going on. Also, on our previous episode, we showed a bunch of really interesting UFO footage that we filmed ourselves, and shared some other of our personal stories. So if you enjoy this kind of content, you may want to go back and check that one out as well. We've noticed a number of other people also claiming that they believe there is a connection between the ancient petroglyphs, secret military presence, energy vortexes, alleged portals, and the UFO phenomena in this area. So we're definitely not alone in thinking these kinds of things might be linked. What do you think? What's all of this pointing towards? Is there something in our ancient past that we need to figure out in regard to what's going on now, and in regard to what might happen in the future as well? Over the years, there have been quite a few different documentaries and History Channel programs filmed here in Sedona in regard to all of this weird kind of stuff, and many of those programs have actually filmed UFOs and other strange things while they were here. So it definitely seems like a hot spot, and there have been countless stories from individuals in regard to all of these things, including other paranormal subjects like Bigfoot, skinwalkers, and even a creature referred to as Dogman. There was this case called the Rendlesham Forest incident, which was one of the biggest UFO cases in history, probably only second to Roswell, and maybe even bigger in some ways because there's still quite a few witnesses, military witnesses, who are still alive and who still talk about it. So there's an aspect of that Rendlesham Forest case where a military man claimed to have touched a craft that landed in a field, and when he touched it, he says that he got this code of zeros and ones beamed into his brain, and he wrote it down in his notebook, and then I think it was like 30 years later, he was being interviewed on Ancient Aliens, and Linda Moulton Howe saw it and asked what it was, and they eventually got it decoded, and it showed 7 different GPS coordinate locations from all around the world. And these are mostly places which have some kind of human history involved, like the pyramids in Egypt and the Temple of Apollo. And there's a few mysterious ones, like one that's out in the ocean and one that's here in Sedona, which more and more makes me think that there could be something to that portal theory, because there have been quite a few people who've gone out to the location in Sedona and no one's really found anything. But many people, or I'm not sure if many is the right word, but a good portion of those people who went out there looking, including me and my friend, reported like a strong vortex energy. And I've lived here my whole life and never really could say that I felt vortex energy anywhere. Maybe because I've lived here so long, I'm just used to it. But at this location, I really do feel like I feel some kind of energy there. And this is something that we'll talk about more in the future, but I just wanted to bring it up real quick in relation to all this other UFO and weird stuff, because I've talked to a few of the people involved in that case, and I've like spent many hours watching all the videos I could find on YouTube about it. And there's a lot of, you know, contradictory stuff. There could even be some psyops, and, you know, the people involved got debriefed and interrogated with like strong drugs, and there could have been some like memories implanted, or there could have been some confusion put into these people's minds. But all that being said, the more I learn about that case, the more I really think that there is something to it. And once again, maybe there's some kind of portal energy there. Maybe there's some kind of vortex. There's a sinkhole not too far away that's off limits. They claim that they're protecting the bats, so people can't go down in there and look around. But I have to wonder, you know, like maybe there's something underground. Maybe there's something more going on with all those stories about vortex energy and portals and craft coming from different dimensions. And maybe this area around here is a place where beings from other places pass through in order to get wherever it is that they're going. I know it probably sounds a bit out there, but it's fascinating. It's truly one of the most interesting things, and I look forward to talking about it more in the future. So, in addition to the Rendlesham Forest binary code coordinates, there's also this other place in Sedona that I mentioned earlier called Bradshaw Ranch. And that place has had books written on it. It's had documentaries made about it. And there's been so many crazy stories coming out of that place that it's just mind-boggling. And me and my friend Daniel from the Epic of Dan YouTube channel, we went to both the Rendlesham Coordinates binary code location, and we also went to Bradshaw Ranch. So those are 2 episodes that will be coming out at some point in the future if you're interested in that kind of stuff. There was some weird stuff that happened at both of those places, including at Bradshaw Ranch. I had my drone like either shot out of the sky or it hit some kind of vortex, because I got this magnetic anomaly error message and my drone just fell out of the sky. So there was a bunch of other really wild and interesting stuff that happened as well. I look forward to sharing it. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see it, and hit that bell so you get notified.
One of the biggest UFO sightings in history happened on March 13th, 1997. The Phoenix Lights became one of the most prominent UFO mysteries of all time. It was witnessed by 20,000 or more people, mostly in Phoenix, Arizona, but also in Sedona, Prescott Valley, Paulden, and Tucson. It was also seen as far away as Henderson, Nevada, which is next to Las Vegas. Most interestingly, there were two different events that occurred hours apart, reportedly from 7 to 10 p.m. in Phoenix. The first phenomenon was the sighting of a large V or boomerang-shaped craft. Ex-Governor Fife Symington witnessed the event. He said the object was an enormous and inexplicable triangular craft, possibly a mile wide. He pointed out that he was a pilot and that it did not resemble any known aircraft because of its shape and silent, slow movement. He also described his experience as being otherworldly and mysterious. He openly disagreed with the military explanations because of the size, shape, and noiseless movement that he had witnessed. The V-shaped object was first seen over Henderson, Nevada, between 7:55 and 8:15 p.m. After that, it was seen between 7:30 and 8:45 in Sedona, and around 8 p.m. in the Prescott area. The military claimed that the sightings were part of a military training mission called Operation Snowbird. Seen as a V formation of A-10 Thunderbolt II aircraft flying at night over the Phoenix Metropolitan Center without crash prevention blinking lights. Really? According to FAA sectional maps, there are no MTR, military training routes, over Phoenix. The whole Phoenix area has controlled airspace above it. There are numerous MTRs around and outside of the Phoenix population area for safety, which is true in other cities around the state. Arizona has many restricted flight areas for military training because of an immense amount of unpopulated land. Outside of military restricted areas, there are many MTRs around the state. The UFO sightings in these other cities matched the descriptions from the Phoenix area of a large triangular craft. However, observers in Sedona said that the UFO circled Sedona a few times at low altitude without sound, during which time it was closely followed by a fighter jet type of aircraft that at one point had to quickly accelerate to catch up to it before they both disappeared to the west towards Prescott. The second event was characterized as glowing orbs of light that were seen near South Mountain in Phoenix, probably within 400 to 600 feet above the city streets and buildings. First one light appeared, and then a number of miles away, a cluster of 3 or 4, which appeared spreading upward into an alignment, followed by a few more, one at a time. Finally, there were 7 in a row, with the first one still a ways away. The pulsating lights remained stationary for about a minute before suddenly disappearing, one at a time. The whole event only lasted about 4 minutes. The military said that this time they dropped balloon flares out of fighter jets. This was also part of Operation Snowbird. I find it strange that the lights didn't form or disappear in linear order, as if dropped from a moving aircraft. It doesn't make sense. Nor does it make sense that the military would conduct a training mission above a populated city in a busy, controlled airspace at night without blinking collision lights. This looks like a government cover-up, like Michigan swamp gas and Roswell weather balloon stories. Strangely enough, the Phoenix lights coincided with the Hale-Bopp comet experience within 9 days of its closest approach to Earth. Are these two events related in some mysterious way? The link to the Phoenix Light Orbs video will be posted at the top of the comments section below the video display. Enjoy.
There's literally so much crazy stuff about Sedona and this area that I'm probably forgetting a bunch of really interesting and fascinating things. But I think that's enough for now, and maybe we'll make another video or more in the future at some point. But I think we've covered plenty, and I hope it was appreciated. I truly find this subject so incredibly fascinating. It's one of my favorite things to learn about. So please, if you have any stories or experiences, not just from Sedona, but from anywhere, we would love to hear about them. So please feel free to share in the comments or get a hold of us through email or whatever and let us know. And thank you so much as usual for joining us. And on the next episode, we'll get back to our usual adventures of finding ancient lost history. Take care and hope you have an awesome rest of your day.